Top stories in this week's edition of the Winn Weekender. Commentators warn of repercussions from the U.S. advisory on the Citizenship by Investment program. Police are investigating alleged rape by burglars at the home of a journalist. And the Labour Party open to debates, but not with the current opposition MPs. Welcome to the Winn Weekender, a comprehensive recap of some of the major stories making the news this week. I'm Tony Frederick Armstrong. Former Government Minister Dwyer Astafan is warning of local repercussions from the American advisory on the St. Kitts and Nevis Citizenship by Investment program. We hear more from Ken Richards.
The advisory accuses the Denzel Douglas administration of continuing to sell the Federation's passports to Iranians after declaring publicly last year that it would no longer do so. The United States has expressed concern that some Iranians are using St. Kitts and Nevis passports to help evade sanctions on Iran imposed by the U.S. and the European Union. Operation Rescue's Astafan claims that certain accounts in Bastille are being watched closely and could eventually be frozen.
It's a very, very serious thing. And one doesn't enjoy saying this, but it is difficult to avoid coming to the conclusion that this thing is going to get even more and more serious, and people could very well go to jail. I can tell you right now that certain accounts in this federation and accounts connected to this federation are being watched very closely. It's very, very serious, and no amount of downplaying or distraction or deflection is going to water down the seriousness of this. This was a wonderful program that could have continued and hopefully will continue. But it cannot continue with the present players. When I tell you, Mr. Richards, that there are accounts that are being watched and targeted now for freezing, and the names attached to those accounts will shock certain people, but they don't shock me. I am telling you, this is a very serious thing.
The opposition leader in the federal parliament, Mark Brantley, is meanwhile suggesting that the Citizenship by Investment program should be much more selective in the kind of clientele it goes after.
My sense is that we ought to immediately put a total ban on some countries and the citizens of some countries accessing this passport.
The government is trying to do its best under trying circumstances, according to former Nevis Deputy Premier Hensley Daniel.
Put it this way, if you issue a passport to somebody and you, up to the point that when they were issued the passport, you had done all your due diligence and checked and they gave a passport, and then the person begins to get involved in illegal activities. If people use our passports for nefarious activities, the passport can be revoked. I think the government does as much as it can, pays as careful attention as it can to the due diligence and to making sure that the persons who get the passports are in fact bona fide and clean enough to get the pass. What I'm saying is all that is required is for us to pay attention to what it says.
I'm Ken Richards for the Winn Weekender.
Police are investigating an alleged rape by burglars said to have broken into the home of broadcaster Andre Huey in the early hours of Monday morning. Winn TV's Ken Richards has more in this report.
Mr. Huey reports having gone to hospital with his wife and daughter who was not well when the burglars struck. They allege to have assaulted a 20-year-old female residing at the house with the Hueys.
Not to go into too much details, but the young lady basically told us what exactly happened to her, and I trust that she has also relayed that information to the police in her statement. There have been evidence in the house to suggest that that did indeed happen because of what had happened that night, and it is obviously a very traumatizing situation for her especially. And we're just praying and hoping that indeed the authorities will find the person responsible for this. This is a really heinous and an evil crime, and the persons responsible must be brought to justice. And I'm very confident that the police will bring them to justice.
Mr. Huey also made mention of the items stolen.
They stole a laptop computer. They stole a tablet computer as well, belonging to my daughter. And they took some other smaller items, some money, as well as my phone charger. Well, those are the main things they took.
He says the entire incident has left his family traumatized and has appealed to the burglars to turn themselves in.
If the persons responsible for this crime are listening, I would advise you to turn yourselves in, because this is something that you will not get away with. I am a born-again believer, a minister of the gospel, and it is one thing I'm sure of, is that anyone that messes with a child of God will be brought to justice.
Still to come on the Winn Weekender, financial analyst urges government not to rely on SIDF money.
WINN is 98.9. 98.9 is Winn FM.
Winn FM's mission is to contribute meaningfully to the information, awareness, and the development of our nation and the region through the building of educated and informed communities. Winn FM faces the issues squarely, without shying away from controversy, while striving continuously to provide balanced, responsible reporting.
Better music, better talk, better radio. 98.9 Winn FM.
Welcome back. The ruling St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party is open to the idea of political candidate debates, but not with the current crop of opposition MPs, so says party chair Marcella Liebert. In a written response to an inquiry from Winn FM about the party's position on candidate debates, Minister Liebert said that, on principle, the SKNLP would not debate opposition members as they have been boycotting Parliament. They have refused to debate us in the official forum for debates, the highest forum for debates, Ms. Liebert writes. She says that they were elected by the people to represent them in Parliament, and they collect their checks every month, even though they do not do the people's business. Why should we debate them outside of Parliament when they refuse to debate us in the Parliament, she asks, adding that is unacceptable to us. The opposition MPs have been boycotting sittings of the National Assembly over the nearly 18-month delay in the tabling of a motion of no confidence in the Denzel Douglas-led administration. The 6 elected opposition MPs, who make up the majority of the 11-seat Parliament, have questioned the legitimacy of Dr. Douglas as Prime Minister. They say not only does he no longer command the support of the majority, but the 6 opposition members from 3 parties are united and have formed an alliance. They will run in the next election on a joint platform and will not run candidates against each other. They have written to the Governor-General to indicate that they do not support Dr. Douglas as Prime Minister and would vote in favour of the motion. Parliament has not convened for over 6 months. Financial analyst Schneidman Warner says the government of St. Kitts and Nevis cannot rely on receipts from the Sugar Industry Diversification Foundation, the SIDF, to sustain its economy. His assessment is based on the analysis of the latest IMF report on St. Kitts and Nevis's economy. Winn TV's Andre Huey has more.
Mr. Warner commended the government on the economic performance of the country, earning the praise of the IMF, as the Federation is ending its standby arrangement with the fund. However, he was keen to point out that the IMF was concerned with the government relying mainly on receipts of the Citizenship by Investment program through the SIDF for sustaining the economy.
The same IMF, which has been tiptoeing around the subject of the SIDF funds, and this has finally put not just their tiptoes, but they put their whole foot into the waters now, and I acknowledge that SIDF resources are what are fueling the economy. They are in favor of it being reduced. And so, in order to say that we are in favor of it being reduced, they are underwriting the government's appeal to the private sector to subsidize the income of some of these PEP employees. But their entire statement of promise and goodwill is countered by saying there are critical challenges to face. They are concerned about further reforms needed in the business environment. They are concerned about growth in the public sector workforce. They're concerned about sound public sector finances. And they're also concerned about the country's vulnerability to exogenous shocks, as they call it. And we can't forget that in their last report, they reminded us that they expect us to sell more land in order to reduce our debt.
Going forward, Mr. Warner pointed to some areas the government must focus on to improve the economy and avoid significantly increasing the debt of the country. The debt-to-GDP ratio, the St. Kitts and Nevis, stands at 104% at the end of 2013, a reduction from almost 200% in 2011.
For the future, what we need to do is ensure that we pursue sensible public hiring practices so that we have a civil service that is a civil service we need rather than a civil service we want, a civil service based on people's ability to do their jobs rather than the need to give them a job, a civil service that is only the size that is needed rather than is wanted, as I said, to run the country. And we need to address the wider subject of efficiency and productivity. We have increased our we are told that we increased our employment by 19%. Are we saying that we have also filled in jobs that were waiting to be filled? Because if there were 4 people doing a job, and because of PEP, there are now 5 people doing the job, we have not increased our productivity. We simply have more workers doing the same work, and therefore we have had a loss of productivity of 25%. So employing more people does not mean you have a more productive country. It just means you have more people employed. Yes, it is to the benefit of the people who have these jobs, but economies are more than just money being spent. It's about efficiency as well.
Teachers at the Basse-Terre High School met Tuesday with a representative of the International Labour Organization, the ILO, to discuss the situation at the school's campus in terms of worker safety issues. The Occupational Health and Safety Specialist Yuka Ujita's visit to assess the situation at the BHS was coordinated by the Department of Labour. She's also reported to have met with the Chief Medical Officer. Ms. Ujita also met separately with the St. Kitts Teachers Union. She was able to engage with teachers for a couple of hours and was also given a tour of the Basse-Terre High and provided with a history of the campus. The Basse-Terre High campus is currently closed over ongoing concerns about health issues that resulted in some students and teachers experiencing a cluster of like symptoms which suggested an environmental cause. The school now shares the campus with the Washington Archibald High on a shift system. Ms. Ujita is expected to discuss her findings with a team from the ILO, which will prepare a report on the occupational health and safety aspect of the situation and make recommendations. Her visit Tuesday was not without controversy, however. Winn FM has learned that Ms. Ujita, the Labour Commissioner, and the BHS teachers waited for some 45 minutes outside of a building where the meeting was expected to take place, reportedly awaiting word of approval from the Ministry of Education to use the facility. They eventually walked to a nearby church where the meeting was held. The Ministry of Education has been granted use of the dental building across the road from the Washington Archibald High, which is used by the schools for regular and after-school classes. According to BHS teachers, the principal of the Washington Archibald High, who holds the keys, would not grant them access to the building, insisting that clearance from the Ministry of Education was required. The ministry is reported to have been aware that the Labour Department was coordinating the itinerary of the ILO representative, but was unaware of the details of the schedule. One source told Winn FM that permission was eventually granted, but by that time the group had moved on to the church. There are also reports that the Washington Archibald High administration was concerned about the oversight of the BHS students while the teachers were attending the meeting. Ultimately, a few teachers, security guards and 2 police officers patrolled the corridors during the meeting, which ran some 2 hours. Basse-Terre High staff who spoke to Winn FM today, Wednesday, dismissed the suggestion that the incident was a miscommunication, believing rather that it was a deliberate attempt to frustrate their efforts to have the situation at the BHS campus addressed. They suggested that it was reflective of what they view as continued disdain and even victimization by the Ministry of Education for their going public with the health concerns at the school. This afternoon, the principal of the Washington Archibald High declined to comment on the incident with the access to the building, indicating that the matter would best be addressed by the Ministry of Education. But in speaking about the shift system, which has been underway for about 3 weeks, Mr. Clifford Gavaya said that it had not been easy, but the schools had made it work. He said it had been a useful exercise as the ministry has been exploring the possibility of a shorter academic school day with extracurricular activities added to the day's schedule. Mr. Gavaya said the experience of sharing the campus with BHS had proven to him that the concept could work. The shift system essentially comes to an end this week anyway, with exams beginning on Friday. With no formal classes, the 2 schools will be able to use the campus at the same time for end-of-term exams. To end the Winn Weekender, a look at some of the headlines. Commentators warn of repercussions from the U.S. advisory on the Citizenship by Investment program. And police are investigating alleged rape by burglars at the home of a journalist. This has been the Winn Weekender. On behalf of the Winn TV News team, I'm Tony Frederick Armstrong.